A new Battlefield game is coming and everyone is patiently waiting to see if it's gonna save the franchise or be its gravestone. Therefore, the FPS genre is going to be filled with information from the developers, but also with expectations and ideas from the community in order to create the Battlefield we all want. I actually wanted to do this video a long time ago and share what my Battlefield would look like. Now that DICE is going to release the next Battlefield at the end of autumn 2025, it's not very likely that we might see something like what I'm thinking of. But if ideas and speculations is what the community wants to see right now, then why should I keep my ideas away from you? This would be a very long video if I talk about every aspect, so I'm going to split the video into different parts and talk about everything one by one. Now before I start, I don't just want to make sure that you subscribe and don't miss any further content again, like the next part, but also to warn you that the video contains the opinion of the creator, so be advised that you are responsible for your own mental damage and intolerance of opinions. Now, thank you for your understanding and enjoy the video. So here it is, the perfect Battlefield. My Battlefield is not just a mix of stuff that we've seen before in previous Battlefield games. My Battlefield has its inspiration from other games like Call of Duty, Far Cry, Squad and so on. And also my own ideas, so let me know what you think. Part 1. Setting, modes and maps. Now before we focus on the core elements like maps and game modes etc, we first need to decide when the game is taking place. We got three options here. We have the historical conflicts like World War I, World War II, Vietnam and so on, modern conflicts, so basically our present time, and the future. For me it's very easy to decide the setting. We've seen enough historical conflicts in Battlefield 1 and 5, and besides that, historical conflicts are scripted. Meaning you don't have a lot of freedom in terms of content. And if you want a future setting, well, just make a Titanfall 3 then. So a modern setting it is. It provides lots of freedom and less complexity in the gameplay. It's also the setting lots of people like to have. Next is game modes. The multiplayer was always the heart of Battlefield, which means that I don't want any stupid extraction modes, no co-op bullshit, and no Battle Royale. You gotta be joking. It's just a waste of resources, and to be honest, a story mode is also something I don't really care about. Sure, Battlefield had some cool stories with Blackburn in Battlefield 3 or B Company in Bad Company 1 and 2, but in the end, it's the multiplayer the majority cares about. But that does not mean that I don't want a story at all. I'd like to see the story in multiplayer instead, just like 2042, but with a better storyline that we can take seriously.
Today I'm
Shut your goddamn mouth.
A story that continues on how we play the game. I'll tell you later more about that. Now in order to have some sort of story, we need our factions. And I'm not talking about countries. These days are over. In our presence, coalitions and groups of multiple countries are dominating the globe. So don't come again with this America versus Russia bullshit. There are way more countries developing into superpowers. The best thing about this is that you can create so much more content if they're not country related. You just have way more freedom for your storyline. And if you fear to use real groups like NATO versus BRICS for example, just come up with something like, I don't know, the Coalition of Ordered Governments versus the Eastern Separatist Alliance. I don't know, pull something out of your yeah, just like that. Now that we have our background, we can go now into the core elements. First of all, the scale. Battlefield was for decades a game for 64 players in a lobby. They tried 128 in Battlefield 2042, but realized that it might be too high. My compromise is to have 100 players. Enough to fill large maps like Hamada, Panzersturm and Sinai Desert, and smaller maps like Verdun, Arras and Narvik. That would also fit perfectly for 5-player squads, which I'd like to see. In terms of game modes, it would feature the regular modes like Conquest, of course, Breakthrough, Rush and Frontlines, but also smaller modes for around 30 players like Team Deathmatch, Domination and Capture the Flag. And one specific mode that would be the heart of the multiplayer. You all remember that Battlefield 1 has one mode that's standing out most, and that is Operations. people love it. It just doesn't tell the story. You are right in it. Your actions affect the outcome. Now I would go deeper with my battlefield and make it more interactive with the players. That the course of the operation changes by how the players attack the objectives with support and resources they vote for before the round starts. It's a bit complicated, so it's better if I show you my idea with an example. Now imagine a huge map, which is split into 3 segments. First segment is an open field with smaller houses and lots of roads, with a lot of vegetation and rivers. A great map for vehicles. Second segment is a small path between huge mountains. Next to the path is a small but deep river. On the other side is a huge underground bunker with some embrasures to shoot towards the path. The underground bunker has also multiple entrances on the cliffs. And the third segment is a town surrounded by huge mountains with only one way out of it, the path of the second segment. Other operations can have only 2 or even 4 segments, so they all don't need to have 3. Now the story of this operation is that the defenders need to hold their position and defend the town until reinforcement arrives, while the attackers need to capture it within 5 attacks. Before the first attack starts though, the defenders and attackers need to decide what bonus they want. Before each round, the teams always vote together which one of their resources they want to use. In this operation, the attackers can decide between air or tank support in terms of resources. After taking a segment, they can even decide how and when they want to attack the next segment. The defenders, on the other hand, have a bunch of artillery, anti-tank cannons, automatic AA guns, and explosives, which they can even use as a levolution element in this operation. The strategic part is that they can only have one resource at a time and decide as a team what they want to use in the segment. I know it sounds a bit strange, but sit tight. So let's start our operation. First segment, and we are playing Breakthrough. Attackers with limited and defenders with unlimited respawns. In our version, the attackers voted for air support because they assume that the enemy is going to use AT cannons to prevent their assault with their tanks. And that turns out to be right. The AT cannons become useless as they can't hit the enemy choppers and fighter jets. The attackers were able to capture the whole first segment with one attack. Now comes the second segment. Because of the failure of the defenders, they cannot use the explosives as levolution and blow up the mountainside in order to block the path. To do so, they had to at least hold the attackers for one time in the first segment, so this bonus becomes obsolete for now. Now they can only decide between the AA and artillery. In our version, they go for the artillery. The attackers with extra respawns because of their victory can now decide how they want to attack. This time, their vehicle support is related to their decision on where to attack. They have 3 options here. First is to go all in with tank support right through the mountain path. As long as the defenders don't choose any defense against tanks, it's all fine. But they know that the enemy has no explosive traps and no more AT guns. The attackers are now scared that the enemy might choose artillery to hold them off. Second option is to screw the tanks and come from the mountain cliffs by air support. They capture the cliffs and infiltrate the bunker system and turn the second segment into a close quarter combat, similar to Operation Locker or Underground. But the attackers feared that the enemy might hold them back in the bunkers, which would result into no tank support at all in the third segment if the enemy used their explosives to block the path in the third round. So they go for the third option, where they attack through the mountain path and send 20% of their team, so basically 10 players or 2 squads, to the cliffs. They have a separate objective where they need to destroy the enemy equipment, in this case the artillery, and force the enemy to fight on 2 fronts. In our version, unfortunately, the attackers fail this time. The defenders are way better coordinated and were able to hold the enemy back. Preparing for the third round, the defenders decide to blow up the mountain path as a bonus, so tank support for the attackers is completely gone till the end. The attackers already knew that the defenders would prevent their armored assault, so they decide to go full on the enemy by air support like Charlie Don't Surf style. The attackers succeed this time and prepare themselves for the third segment. The attackers have 3 options here again. The operation started on day 1 in the morning. Second attack was at midday and the third was in the evening. Now, the fourth attack is at night. They can use the night as their advantage and engage the enemy with a full-scale attack with air support like in Operation Guillotine in Battlefield 3. Everyone would be forced to fight with flashlights, flares and night vision. If they want to avoid fighting in the night and rather want more respawns for their next attack, they can vote to wait until the next morning. But this comes with the cost of sacrificing the 4th round, meaning waiting until dawn would turn into the 5th round and so their last chance of winning. In our version, the attackers go for the 3rd option. They attack in the night but with no vehicle support at all. Their main objective is to destroy the last bonus of the defenders, the enemy AA guns. This would result into Conquest Assault mixed with Rush. The attackers just need to infiltrate the town, plant explosives on the AA and retreat back to the mountains, or set up a perimeter at the entrance of the town. If the attackers are able to set up the perimeter, the defenders would be under pressure in the last round as they would now be the one with limited respawns. The attackers would only need to capture the town within a specific time in order to win the operation. In our version, they succeed, and now the defenders are left with limited respawns, some choppers and tanks against a mass of attackers provided by air support. So one last match decides the winner of the operation. Now this was one example. They could do that on different places around the world. They could use cities, deserts and jungles too. They could make crazy introductions for each sector like wingsuiting down the mountain or attacking from under the water. The cool thing is, it gives the game more character and makes it more interesting with the different outcomes that you can have. The story could even be continued with the next content drop, as the amount of wins by the attackers or defenders from all matches that have been played by the community until a specific time would decide which version of the operation would become canon for the next operations. Basically, we as a community would have written the whole story. And if you think that it might be difficult to create such a large map, it's actually not, because you can use each segment as a separate map too. Segment 1 and 3 would be perfect as a regular conquest map, and the second segment would be a cool CQC map for team deathmatch and domination, for example, or literally turn it into Operation Locker 2.0. That's about for the game modes. Let's talk about the menu. It's not that complicated, we just need the regular stuff we always had, which is a server browser because I want to decide where I want to play on, a scoreboard with points, kills and deaths, a voice over IP with squad mates and a separate one between squad leaders, just like in Held It Loose. And we want to be able to join a match with our party, and that's actually all we need. Now that's about it for the first part. If I forgot something, I'm going to show it right now. Part 2 would be about the classes and gameplay. If you don't want to miss part 2, just click on the notification, which will inform you as soon as I drop the video. Now that being said, thank you for listening, I'll see you in the next video.